that we are seeing, as I say, in this globalised world, the fact that companies are moving their profits around cross-border. And again, that is something that is actually very difficult to deal with at a national level. We're seeing it's difficult to deal with at a national level. But we are taking action at a European level. So we are making it so that companies have to open up their books and be much more transparent about what profits they are making in which companies. And we have seen, various companies, Google being one example, but various coffee chains that apparently have not been making a profit in this company for a number of years, according to their tax returns. Well, that is something we have to take action on, but we are most effective at taking action on at a European level, because these companies are benefiting from the public services that other companies and people are contributing to. They are benefiting from our NHS, they are benefiting from our education system because their workers are benefiting from it. They're benefiting from our roads and our infrastructure, so they damn well should be paying that contribution to our society. And that is why we are taking action at a European level, and that is why it would be more effective to have that action at a European level as well. So those are, as I say, a quick trot around just some of the pragmatic benefits. There are a load more. There are consumer benefits, there are all sorts of benefits that we get in so many areas, and I haven't even talked about trade and jobs as well, but the impact and the benefits that we get from our European Union membership. Moving on though to our place in the world, this is about our standing in our neighbourhood. We saw, just today, there was another world leader some leader of another country that said supporting our continued membership of the European Union, which was the Indian Prime Minister. But we've seen leaders from the US to Tokyo saying Britain is a more significant player on the global stage from within the European Union than if we leave the European Union. And that, I think that's an infallible truth in the sense of what is our view of ourselves. If our view of ourselves is that we don't have a central role to play in our own neighbourhood, then why do we think the rest of the world would think we have a central role to play in the rest of the world? We are hugely important inside the European Union. We are one of the 3 countries without whom nothing happens. We can stop things happening, we can make things happen at a European Union level. And it is us, France and Germany that are the 3 significant countries. And that is why when I talk to people from outside the UK, be it my colleagues in the European Parliament or other people from around the rest of Europe, or indeed people from outside of Europe, their initial reaction to our referendum is to think we have taken leave of our senses, leaving the European Union, where we are so central. And other colleagues in Europe, that is absolutely, it's kind of, you are hugely important inside the EU. Why would you give up that role inside the EU? But also, we already have opt-outs from so much of the legislation in the EU as well. So it's not as if we haven't already been given a different position inside the EU. But it is that standing that we need, our view of ourselves. If we are an international nation, then surely that means we work with our closest neighbours. It isn't as if the rest of the world is going, oh, if only you weren't inside the EU, we'd have a better relationship with you. Or if we were looking at it from a trade perspective, if only we weren't inside the EU, we could trade much more with other places around the world. Doesn't apply to Germany. Germany trades 3 or 4 times as much as we do with places like China, Belgium, and I have double-checked this fact, Belgium trades more with India than we do. And both of those countries, you can't say they aren't at the heart of the European Union. I know because I go to Belgium regularly because the Parliament's in Brussels. So, there is nothing stopping us trading with the rest of the world because it is quite possible to do it very successfully from within the European Union. So, as an outward-looking international nation, which we always have been, then we should be doing that from within the European Union, not actually hobbling ourselves on the global stage. And just finally on that kind of UK in the world, UK position, I would say as well that, and in fact this came up in a hustings last night, if the UK as a whole votes to leave the European Union, it is almost certain that Scotland will have voted to stay inside the European Union. And I fear, it may be a hope for Alexander, it's a genuine fear for me, I fear that we will then have a second referendum in Scotland, and that at that point the Scottish people will vote to leave the UK, and it would be even harder for us to persuade them to stay. So the UK would not just be diminished on the global stage, we would also be smaller actually in an atlas, and I think that is also something that we should be concerned about. My final points, before I shut up, would be around the point of principle. And again, as I may have mentioned, as a trade unionist, as a Labour Party person, I'm an internationalist. We do cooperation. We are stronger together. We achieve more together. We are able to deliver more for the people that we care about if we cooperate and work together. And the EU embodies those principles. But there is also one final thing which I think matters hugely in this point of principle, is that we need to remember the reason that the European Union was created. And those men, and they were largely men, that got together to form the EU, did so because they had lived through the first half of the last century, which was the bloodiest part, decades, 2 world wars, where we did inhuman things to each other in our continent. And they vowed, those men, that that would never happen again. And they recognised that building these structures where we talked together, where we worked together, was a means by which we could avoid having that bloodshed in our countries ever again. And although we managed to do it on a scale that was unseen before, the 2 world wars in the first half of the last century was simply the culmination of centuries where we had been at war. For one part of Europe was at war with a different part of Europe for centuries, going back to ancient Greece and the Roman times. Throughout recorded history, we have never lived through, we have never had a longer period of peace than the one we are living through now, and long may it last. But if we want to think about how vulnerable we are to that, to the fragility of peace, then I think the example was set by former Yugoslavia, where you see in towns and villages where people who had come from different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds, and been cohabiting and coexisting for decades and before the 1990s, and yet within a very, very short period, you saw the fact that they were killing each other. Reading tragic stories about teachers taking young men that they had taught as boys into the woods and shooting them. Having a concentration camp on our practically membership in our neighbourhood, again, in the 1990s. That is a blatant, frightening demonstration of how fragile peace is. And I think we should cling to the hope of the men that formed the European Union. We should recognise what we have through the European Union and all the cooperation that that embeds in our life. And we should cherish that. And that should be part of what we are thinking of when we vote to remain in the